Hello, hi, my name is Jared, aka Prosperity42, and I'd like to welcome you to a show I'm putting together called Walkin and Talkin, wherein me and some other nerd are gonna do a little bit of walking and a whole lot of talking. Today, I'm joined by a man that needs no introduction, and I'll let him introduce himself. That's your cue. You completely missed the frame, but it's fine. It's fine. You're here.
Now I'm in frame.
Tell the people your name.
Around these parts, I'm known as Whoop. Plain and simple.
Plain and simple. But anyway, we're gonna get on walking here, and do a little bit of talking. Let you catch up a little bit.
Make sure that's It's not gonna be lined up on both screens, but that's good.
No, it's fine. It's fine. We're doing it live.
We're doing it live.
So anyway, we're doing this little series so that we can like hash out some of the things that have been bothering us for the last, however long we've been playing this game, which is entirely too long if you ask me, but we're still having fun with it, and we just have some opinions, and we wanted a place to spew them out, get them out there, float them out, whatever. I don't know. But anyway, there's been a little bit of a heated discussion over the last few weeks over the global cooldown, and
yes,
and that's something we really wanted to kind of talk about, hash out a little bit.
It's a divisive topic.
Yeah, we've got all sorts of people angry about all sorts of things that does it really matter?
Some people bring up points that make sense, some are bringing up points that don't make sense, and where our views lie probably is somewhere
in the middle.
Yeah.
as are most of our opinions on this game, but yeah, that'd be a good thing to look at what we got out, but yeah, it's something that I think there are some things that I think are good that can come out of these changes anyway. But whether or not we'll see where the game direction is being taken, if those changes will be great, or if they will be mediocre, or if they will be horrible, we have yet to see.
The thing with it is, whatever they do with it is going to be, like we said, divisive. They can't, please everybody, but there is, or at least should be, the way that we see it, I think, an objectively good way to make such a big change. And it has to be, because they came into it whole hog saying you're not going to like feedback, but we need to get feedback to change it.
Absolutely.
And and they have reacted.
Oh
yeah, and they have reacted to feedback, which is good.
Yeah.
But it's all about if they can strike that balance between doing what they want to do with the game and what the players want to do with their game.
Yeah, that's true. And there is, for those of you that are donners of tinfoil hats, there is a contingency of people that are under the express idea that they did the changes in the way that they did to say, oh hey, we're gonna take this way too far, and then dial it back a little bit, intentionally.
It's the type of thing with if they ruin the global cooldown now, and then next expansion they say, oh, look at all these things that are off the GCD again, and everyone's like, oh, this is great, but it's taking something away to give it back to us, which I don't believe is what's happening, but it's a marketing ploy. It's a way to sell boxes if they do that.
Absolutely.
Which it's a business, they have to do stuff like that. So
I
just hope that they could. I don't believe that's their primary goal for it, is what I should say.
And that's, it's Activision's goal. That's for certain.
Well, yeah.
But we're not here to discuss the finer details of
we're about how it
business.
We're supposed to talk about how it plays, not
right.
what the suits we predict the suits are doing with it.
Speaking of how the game plays, the first batch of arguments is in how the classes feel after the global cooldown changes were made and pushed into the beta as of a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month and a half ago. I'm not exactly sure what the timeline is on it, but I know when they changed it, or since they've changed it, it's been quite a while, and they've been making a lot of changes to it since. But the initial feel of it was awful for everyone across the board. It didn't matter.
It's like, it's like they said, they knew it was not going to be. It was A, not the finished product, and B, they did it. They dialed it to such an extreme so that they could get feedback in the way they did. So that they could then make further changes to it, and that's, because it did feel bad. I mean, obviously things that are off the global cooldown, they have a certain kind of fluidity and responsiveness to them when you press them.
Sure.
Because you're so used to watching your bars spin around and do the whole global cooldown thing that whenever you get to press something, which it is something you get to do, it's not something that you should be expected to have. It's something that you get to do that's off the global cooldown that feels good. But the question of what should and shouldn't be on the global cooldown, I think that's the question. It's not, like, what should they do to change the way it is on live versus on beta. It's they just need to make up their minds, make up a system, and decide definitively these things are on the global cooldown, these things are not on the global cooldown, and that be the end of it. Yeah,
absolutely. And the thing is that they didn't just take like cooldowns off the global cooldown. They started taking almost everything off the global cooldown. Stuff like I don't think that they took Shield of the Righteous off the global cooldown. They might have at one point and then immediately returned it back, but they definitely have not taken Hand of the Protector off the global cooldown. And that's something
I think every tank is like, and that's one of the ones that I think is being affected the most, is just tanks in general. With active mitigation being on or off the global cooldown. But I think every tank now has at least one thing on and one thing off. No tanks are locked behind everything being on the global cooldown,
which is definitely the case whenever they first made these initial changes. But I wanted to get into the discussion about the philosophy of the global cooldown changes that they made, because the reason they almost immediately after they announced that they were doing this, they went live with a developer Q&A on YouTube and Twitch, I guess. And first thing right out of the gate, whenever this thing started, the first question they got to, I haven't watched it. It's been a couple of weeks.
It was just he came on and he's like addressing it beforehand because they got too many questions about about it.
Global cooldown. But regardless, they immediately came out the gate saying we want to change how you play the game, because it's slowly becoming a matter of, can you press this button quick enough, as opposed to can you think about what buttons need to be pressed before X event happens. And that's ultimately why they're making this change.
And it has to do with, because in the world with like boss timers and stuff, they know that people are going to know that the boss is going to do really big scary move in 10 seconds, you know. So it's not a matter of, oh, this boss has a 0.5 second cast time and you have to react in that. You know, 10 seconds ahead of time what he's going to do. So, having you don't need everything, like with tank mitigation as an example, you don't need everything to be, off the global cooldown so you can react instantly. You just need it to be, and that's the other thing too, where, you don't have to have, and especially me, a type of play style that has a bunch of off the global cooldown things or things that are global cooldown locked that are very spammy. I think I'm not alone in saying that I don't like that kind of play style anymore. It's stressful and hectic, especially when you're trying to, do your normal rotation and then, throw in an interrupt there or something, whatever it is. It definitely takes away, I think it takes away from the experience of successfully performing your rotation or doing whatever it is, when which is not a rotation anymore. Yeah. But, the order of things you're going to do and then executing.
Right. And Preach said it probably the best or most succinct. I won't say the best, but he said it most succinctly when he said that everything just feels like they slowed it down for the sake of slowing things down, which is completely.
I mean, I think they did.
Yeah, but that's a reasonable thought to have, especially since they said that they want to make it to where you're thinking about the actions that you're going to be taking before they happen, and they don't want it to be, oh well, this crazy thing is going on right now, let me react to it. And that's ultimately where they want it to go.
But there are some things, because it goes both ways, right? Where it's, there are, you can say that, you don't need for everything to be off the global cooldown. The global cooldown is a huge part of the game. Like it's something that whatever your content you're doing in the game, you're interacting with the global cooldown. So, and like I said before, it's just about deciding what is or should and what shouldn't be on or off the global cooldown.
Yeah.
Because, something like tank mitigation it's okay, but, when you have like a big cooldown or something, that's like a 3-minute cooldown or something, and you try to press that and you die because you're in the middle of a global cooldown and you can't save your life or save the raid or something, that's when it causes a problem.
Yeah.
Because you can plan, boss big hit A is happening in 10 seconds. You can have that mitigation up or whatever, revival or something if you're trying to like snipe the heal or something immediately after it. You can do that. But there are certain things that should be off the global cooldown, and I think that is big.
Yeah. And I agree. I think your notes in here say anything more than a minute should be off the global, and anything under a minute should be on the global cooldown.
And the reason why I specified for that is just because it's, things that are less than a minute or less are, mostly going to be rotational. Look at something like a warrior. Well, I've been playing the beta too much. Right. In the beta, a warrior Colossus smash. It's treated like it's a 45-second cooldown. It's treated like a DPS cooldown, but it's when you press it, it's a physical. You swing your weapon and hit it. It doesn't feel like you're just activating I'm stronger now for 20 seconds button. You know what I mean? So that makes sense. But also, if you have something like Avatar, that is all, staying with warrior here. If you have something like Avatar that's just a 1.5 minute cooldown that makes you do everything better for 20 seconds or whatever, there's no reason for you to have to press that. There's no reason for you to have to wait for the global cooldown to do that. think about on pull. If you're going to charge in and activate your cooldowns, that's charging in and at the same time activating your cooldowns versus charging in and then pressing cooldown 1, cooldown 2, cooldown 3, and that's the main
basically,
problem from a DPS point of view.
Basically charging in and then just screaming at the boss for 10 seconds.
Which it's comical,
Yeah.
but it doesn't feel good to do, especially when you're everyone's used to macroing abilities together and that kind of thing. When you spend your first 5 global cooldowns activating all your cooldowns, what's the point?
It doesn't feel good, and I think that that brings us to the next topic of discussion, is why are they making these changes to the global cooldown without looking, and this is, I'm just being devil's advocate here, they are doing what I'm about to accuse them of not doing, but very slowly and incrementally, in these weeks leading up to the release of this next expansion. But why are they making these changes to the global cooldown without making massive changes to how the class or the classes individually work?
Right.
And even more specifically than that, why are we still seeing a lot of talent trees that have talents that are, a lot of the viable talents picked in most of the talent trees across the board? You pick big abilities, big cooldowns over the passive things, and you're rewarded for that in the current system. But we're not seeing any of those really be, taken away or recreated in some way that isn't such a massive, hit to the global cooldown. We're just not seeing that.
And they had an opportunity. If they would be addressing this global cooldown problem during the Legion class redesigns, it would have been totally, I think, been more well received, and it would have been easier for them to do, instead of just saying, oh, hey, by the way, global cooldown's way different. We're just slapping it on top of, current classes, because it's if the classes were designed around having that global cooldown, say, just for an example, and this goes maybe against the 1 minute thing that we were talking about earlier, but say, for example, every class has one baseline DPS cooldown that is just, like your standard 2 minute or whatever it is cooldown that increases your damage for some time. That's
right.
Fine. That's off the global cooldown because they know you're going to have that. You know what I mean? Now, to have big cooldowns in the talent tree, maybe those will be on the global cooldown, but they can design them in such a way so that, like there was one, I'm looking at my talent tree here so I can see if I can remember which one it was. There was a talent on the beta for warriors that they actually did this with, and I think it makes sense. It was Bloodbath is what it was. It's a cooldown, all it does is apply a buff to you that makes your abilities then cause a bleed damage. And that was on the global cooldown, so it was just a whole global cooldown of you just, like you said, yelling and not doing anything.
Yeah.
But the way they addressed it, I think, is the appropriate way to address it. What they did was they just made it have a initial big punchy hit and then applied the buff to you as well. So it felt like an attack, right? And also was a cooldown at the same time. So it doesn't just feel like you're sitting there yelling
right.
for a whole global cooldown and then you can start hitting things. If they could apply that type of answer to every other class that has this problem, just so that everything, we'll say it this way, everything on the global cooldown should have an immediate effect, to where it feels like you press that button and something happened, not you're pressing that button in preparation to press your other buttons. You know?
And my general thoughts on how big abilities should feel, and that's an example, that right there, Bloodbath is a perfect example of how how things should be designed, because it gives you an ability that changes how the rest of your abilities work with that ability being taken. Now, the elephant in the room for me is Fire Mage, because I've been leveling a mage recently, and they took what is it? The spell that you have 2 charges of that immediate Fire Blast. They took Fire Blast off the global cooldown, which completely, absolutely wrecks how fire works.
You mean they placed it on the global cooldown?
Or yeah, they placed it on the global cooldown, which completely,
just so we're clear.
Yeah. Slight clarification. Sorry. They placed it on the global cooldown, and it completely broke how Fire Mage plays. Period. Like it just feels awful now. Which, if you don't know, basically the goal of Fire Mage is to get a hot streak, and then which a hot streak is you start one on a crit, and then you complete a hot streak with a follow-up crit, and your Fire Blast always crits. So you would spam Fireball until you generated the start of a hot streak, and then you complete it with Fire Blast and then follow up with a big Pyroblast. And now you can't do that. You can't clip a Fireball cast with a Fire Blast. You can't clip a Fireball cast with a Fire Blast off the global cooldown and then clip that with a Pyroblast, which doesn't feel good.
The whole gameplay, and this is something that can be said too, is that what should and shouldn't be on the global cooldown can be decided. I was going to say class by class, but it can even be spec by spec. Because Absolutely. Like a Fire Mage, for example, is it's a reactionary playstyle. It's very fast-paced, and you're reacting to things that are happening, and you need to be able to react to them extremely quickly. That's why, like, Fire Blast is off the global cooldown and can even be cast, like, in the middle of casting another spell. And same thing with Combustion. You know, it makes that the playstyle of the Fire Mage possible. Yeah. So when they just say, okay, all these things are on the global cooldown now, of course it completely destroys the spec, because it's designed around those things being off the global cooldown. So if it were, you know, maybe Fire Mage is a good example of things that they should have most things just be off the global cooldown and accept that that's the class that they designed. And like I said, with the Legion class redesigns, they had an opportunity to kind of redesign these classes. But they kind of have to say, okay, we designed Fire Mage to be this way. It's just going to stay the way it is, at least on a functional level. Right. And that's it. Because with the Fire Mage, the artifact ability, the Phoenix Flames, that was on the global cooldown. Yeah. I say was because I played my mage at the beginning of the expansion. I don't know if it is now, but I know it was on the global cooldown, and it still, you know, you had Fire Blast there that was, like we said, still works, but, you know, the Phoenix Flames does the same thing, but it is on the global cooldown. So it's a weird choice, you know, 2 spells that do basically the same thing, but one is on and one is off. You know, how do they decide that? Yeah. So, but if they went by class and kind of decided which things are appropriate to be on the cooldown and which things are not appropriate to be on the cooldown, then it would be fine. It's like we said before, they kind of just slapped it on top of everything and said, here you go. With
wanton disregard for everything. And that's multi-boxer. Fantastic.
No, that's
it's a quest? Okay.
Quest,
it looked like a multi-boxer to me. Oh, those were the days. Walking around seeing multi-boxers just flooding everything. Oh, good grief. But yeah, that's my main issue with the whole thing, which overall I completely agree. They needed to take a step in the direction that they took.
Yeah.
I disagree.
Because I don't want to have
I disagree in how they did it.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing, is just how they look, it's another multi-box, or it's just how they did it, because and the way they explained it in that Q&A and in other blog posts and things makes sense. They're trying to slow down the game, but the game it's never been a particularly fast-paced game.
No.
So, of course, different scenarios might be different, like a rating counter where what the boss is going to do in 10 seconds versus PvP where you don't really know that. The speed of gameplay changes, but at the base, foundation of it, it's not a fast-paced game. So trying to kind of reel it in a bit and say, okay, off the global cooldown, things have gotten a little bit out of hand. We're going to try to rebalance this out and make it work, I think is a valid thing to want to do. And if it were me, and this is I don't think they would do this, and I don't think a lot of people would want them to do this, but part of me just wants them to just redefine the global cooldown and say, okay, the global cooldown is just that, global. It's on literally everything. Mm-hmm. And you play the game around that. Well, not around it as if you're trying to bypass it, but
right.
You're used to it in such a way where every action you take has to be meaningful because you're going to be put on the global cooldown, and that, includes big cooldowns, active mitigation, stuff like that.
Sure.
But it would make those things they would be designed around that global cooldown. It wouldn't just be the game now, but everything triggers the global cooldown. That's what they did in the beta, and it was obviously a failure. So, yeah. But just to make it consistent, because that's my main gripe with the global cooldown now, is that it isn't consistent between what is and what isn't on the global cooldown.
They haven't designed the game to be consistent in that regard. Mm-hmm. Like, the only thing that's consistent is we know exactly what abilities are going to be used and when they're going to be used in any encounter, save for PvP. Exactly what you said. That's the only consistent thing in this entire situation. And mm-hmm. we're at a point where, like, everyone knows how to play their class, assuming everyone.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
Everyone has an idea. Everyone has an idea of how each class and spec is supposed to be played. Whether that idea is correct or not, it doesn't matter.
If you're playing at a level that you would be required to know how your class is played, odds are you do. Yes. But that's anyway, beside the point, I guess.
Yeah, completely beside the point. The point is that everyone has a feel. Everyone that knows how to play their class has a feel for how things are supposed to work, and they have been incredibly diligent with listening to feedback given to them by the players in the beta, and they have made changes accordingly, and things are a lot better now today than they were 2 weeks ago, even.
Yeah.
Even a week ago.
Yeah.
Things were still just abysmal, and of course, with everything relating to a beta, like there's no set thing. Like everything's changing constantly. Nothing is sacred. Everything's in flux, and you just kind of have to see what things are being changed and what's being done from week to week.
And that's why they have a beta.
I'm being attacked.
I got you, buddy. But that's why they have a beta, so that, they can, because imagine if the game launched and they're just like, okay, this is how it is now. That would be a disaster.
Absolutely.
So it's why they have things like this, so they can test it. But a lot of people, they get beta access and they're just like, and they go in and they play it and they're like, well, this is incomplete, it's garbage. What's happening? It's a beta. It's supposed to be incomplete garbage. It's why it's there, to be tested.
Right.
So, the fact that they when they initially did this, like they said, they put it on and they said, look, this is not going to be good at first, but
yeah.
And
I think that's the biggest point that they made with the whole thing is they were completely aware that it was going to feel like garbage to everyone, and they stressed that so much, and they still received so much hate for it, for every change that was made.
I mean, it's such a general thing, because I mean, no matter what changes they make, they're gonna get a lot. You're gonna see all the hate about it, but you don't see all the praise. Like whether it's I guess in fringe circumstances, if something good happens, you'll see the praise for it. But in very, the vast majority of things, when a change happens, the people that are upset about it are going to be vocal about it. The people that are happy about it are just going to be like, they're just going to keep on keeping on. They're not even going to think twice about it.
Yeah.
And
it's always the minority that is very upset about it. And we call them the vocal minority for a reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something. It's always plagued game developers in general, but specifically Blizzard, because they've had such a history of leaving those lines open to everyone.
They have such a huge audience of people that they're trying to make the game for.
Yeah.
But that's just the thing. They can't. That's impossible to do. Like there's so many different kinds of people that play this game that, you're not going to be able to please everybody. Like I said earlier, I don't necessarily want a class that has a bunch of super fast abilities and global cooldown locked, and, I don't want that. But a lot of people probably do want that really fast gameplay. They want something that's going to be really speedy and responsive and that kind of thing. But that's what this change goes directly against, is that person that wants that gameplay style. Which, I mean, look at, when the game originally came out, everything was on the global cooldown. That's just how it was.
Literally everything was on the global cooldown.
And they took things off the global cooldown based on what made sense. Like, I think interrupts was the first thing that kind of became off the global cooldown, which, kind of like what I said earlier, in those days, you may not have had a boss mod telling you what was going to happen in 10 seconds or whatever.
Right.
You had to react to the cast time of whatever mob it was and hit it in time, which if you just happened to hit your whatever rotational ability, you couldn't interrupt, and that was awful. So they took that off. And it's that process of saying, okay, this feels bad on the global cooldown, let's take it off, that I think has gotten out of hand, and they're trying to reel back in.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't possibly agree more with that, because that's ultimately that's the correct sentiment. That's the correct headspace to be in going into this, is to say that they have identified a problem. They're doing what they can to reach a solution to the problem that ultimately makes the most people happy. But I don't even think it's that. I think it's more along the lines of they want to do something to bring the game to a design space that they can do more with than where the design space was heading.
It has to do with the longevity of the game too, because they now, I think they realistically expect the game to go on for, for twice as long as it's gone on now, So they have to plan ahead for that. And, what is the game going to look like in another 10 years? We have no idea. That's what they're trying to make a foundation for now, is to, change things like classes in Legion, the global cooldown now, to be something that makes more sense. It doesn't make sense comparatively to what we know already, but something that makes sense for the long-term kind of vision of what the game is going to be in another 10 years. Because if they keep going and, say they keep all cooldowns off the global cooldown. They keep adding new ones, or say they start giving every class a new ability every expansion or something. I'm just gonna have one macro that's like 10 lines long, and just like use it, which is what they're trying to avoid.
Yeah.
But
they're
at the
trying
same
to
time,
avoid that like the plague.
Yeah, but it's a thing. At the same time, you can't just have those same 10 abilities and just press them back to back to back to back to back.
Yeah.
Because that's what's causing people to be so upset about it now.
Yeah.
So
and that the design of each class and spec changes from expansion to expansion. There's no getting around that.
Yeah.
Because they're constantly in this mode of trying to make everything feel the best that it can feel and be the best that it can be. And at the end of every expansion, actually before even the end of the expansion, probably about midway through the expansion, they get to a point where they realize, okay, here's where we did good things with this class and here's where we did bad things with this class. Ultimately, right now, the big controversy is the global cooldown, as we've been talking about this whole time. But that's something that I can almost guarantee you they were looking at from the midpoint in the expansion.
Oh yeah, it's something that's probably been in the works for even longer than that. Because this isn't a change to a specific class talent spec ability or something. This is a change that affects literally everything, every class in the game. So they've been sitting on this for a little bit, and it makes sense. Say they did have this ready in mid-Legion. That would have caused even more of a stir if they dropped it at like 7.3 or something, like right for the new raid. That would have been a disaster.
Right.
But they probably have been sitting on it for a while, waiting for the new expansion to drop it then, because a fundamental change to the game like this makes sense to drop in an expansion, not in the middle of an expansion, which that at least makes sense. And kind of like what I said, I hope that they can make because the global cooldown is like, it's part of the base kind of foundation of how the game works. So if they can make a system for it, let me turn right here. If we can make a system for it that is consistent and makes sense for every class and spec, and that they can design around for the future, that's the goal I think they have. Because I don't think they want it to feel like everything's changing from expansion to expansion. They want something that can last, and I think that's what they're trying to do. I hope that's what they're trying to do.
You said it right there. That's yeah. That's all we can say about it. They're doing what they think is best for the game, and I'm not gonna be one to argue with the philosophy of it. I can argue all day with the implementation of it, but until 8.0 drops and we get these changes actually in the game, in our hands, we're just gonna have to wait and see.
It's hard to know, because like we said, it can change tomorrow. Everything that we said in this video might be completely out the window, in the next build or whatever it is. So it's hard to tell until we know how it's actually going to be on launch day. It's all kind of up in the air, and at
that's
the end
okay.
of the day, it is a beta.
That's okay. It's perfectly okay. But yeah, thank you for watching. Our feet and our jaws are tired. See you next week when we talk and walk some more. Oh, hello there. Welcome to the end card. If you'd like to see more, please feel free to hit the subscribe button and the little bell notification icon next to it. Apparently that helps. So yeah, go ahead and hit those. Do the right thing.